and then we measure in the form of temperature. Okay, and then we do engineering calculation on energy balances and all that we'll focus today. So this is the typical energy flow in engineering. Okay, and you have to really focus here from different angles of energy. Like say, suppose you know that there are different forms of energy: thermal energy, mechanical energy, electrical energy, magnetic, chemical, nuclear, different forms of energy. Now, whenever you are considering an engineering process, what is happening, like say, suppose if you are trying to run, that means you are having some kinetic energy, some potential energy. Now they are getting converted into some sort of work, like say, suppose you are moving. Now when that happens, you generate heat, and that heat is coming back to you in the form of thermal energy. Like say, suppose electrical energy, you are using electric engine, or say suppose electric vehicles, to mechanical. Okay, my cursor is visible. Somebody confirms my cursor is visible.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes,
so yes, please. Yeah, thank you. So electrical energy is getting converted to mechanical energy in an electric vehicle, and in the process you can see you are generating the heat. So similarly, magnetic energy, say motors, getting converted to mechanical energy, and you are generating heat. Okay, chemical energy to electrical energy, this is used in the batteries, lithium-ion batteries, and in the process in your mobile phone you have batteries, and you see they generate heat. At the same time, chemical energy also can produce mechanical energy, like say suppose gasoline is being converted to heat, and then that heat is used for the movement of the car. So that is a mechanical energy, kinetic energy, and then you can see that also produces heat. Nuclear reactors, they produce heat. Then heat is converted to what? High pressure steam, and that high pressure steam is used for the power generation. So you see that in different engineering processes at different levels, this parameter, that heat that appears, and that has become one of the center focus of about 200 years of development, post-industrial revolution, middle of 17th century until end of 20th century. You have about 250 years of development of different engineering subjects around the flow of heat. Okay. So we discussed about this particular point, and this is a very important point in terms of modern day of engineering, that see, not only we have to understand how exactly energy is flowing from one side to the other side of an engineering process, but we have to also focus on the quality. Why? Today you will see the slides that I will show you. From there you will get to know, why is it necessary. So a higher quality of energy has more higher engineering value. Okay, say suppose potential energy, say suppose nuclear energy. Okay, these are having very high engineering value. Why? Because they can really do some sort of very significant amount of work. Okay, whereas lower quality of energy always leads to a lower quality of work, but that cannot be also ignored, because you can really make the process very, very energy efficient. If you can extract energy out of the low quality energy. So first you have to be aware of the hierarchy of energy in terms of high quality to low quality, and then you have to make use of the energy at every state in order to make sure that the engineering process is efficient. So we discussed about different types of plants. I will show you, maybe in the next class, I will show you some videos of the thermal power plant, of the ammonia plant. Okay, it is good to know, how does that happen. And we discussed about, see, there are boilers, there are condensers, there are heat exchangers. Okay, you can see different level when you are heating something, when you are cooling something, you require the devices which are called the heat exchanger, which is the heart of the story of the class called, or the course called, heat transfer. So suppose if you look at here, chimney, this is also a heat exchanger device. Why? Because the hot fluid is coming here. Now in this column, what you are doing, you are somewhat cooling it down, and then what you are doing, you are throwing it in a place which is atmosphere. So suppose you will see these chimneys are very, 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 very high and long. Why? Because if I throw it in the normal community, there'll be a lot of heat generation in the in the places where the dwellers are dwelling, the people are having houses and all. So what you do, you first throw it to the atmosphere, which is far away from the community, and then what you do while you are doing that, when the plume is going from the bottom to top, what happens, it generally radiates some heat. So it just releases some heat, and then it goes up and then it goes upwards, so that it is mixing with the atmosphere where the temperature is more or less 25. So by the time it is coming to the places where communities are there, it is not much increasing the temperature. So this also a kind of you can see it's a heat exchanger device. Okay, so there are lots of different types of heat exchanger devices that we discussed in the last class, in the thermal power plant, ammonia plant, sulfuric acid plant. Especially we discussed about thermal power plant and ammonia plant. These are the building blocks of engineering. Whereas sulfuric acid plant, we discussed this is about more of a kind of advancement. More sulfuric acid means, you have got more advancement. The developing countries to the developed country, the ratio that has been decided by some of the manufacturing skills is not only about whether you can manufacture or not, it is about how much you can manufacture. Okay. So in that context, we discussed about the three different plants, which you will study, you will study about 20 different plants in your chemical process technologies CPT course, okay, as you progress. But then we could convince ourselves that, okay, heat exchangers are necessary. So essentially at the right hand side, you can see this is the typical diagram of a heat exchanger where a hot fluid is coming. This hot fluid is getting cold. Red means hot, and it is becoming blue. That means it is becoming cold at the end, whereas a cold fluid is going from one side and it is becoming hotter. And this process is called heat exchange. So essentially, I'm trying to cool down a liquid, and then I'm trying to heat up the other fluid. And then based on the construction, this is a double pipe heat exchanger, this is a shell and tube heat exchanger. If these tubes of the shell and tube heat exchangers is having more surface, more area, okay, so then this is called a fin tube heat exchanger. Okay. Now these are all surface compact heat exchangers. When the surfaces are having this type of architecture, it can be single phase, two phase. Okay, it can be based on different types of mechanism. This is called a condenser. Okay, this is called an evaporator. So different types of heat exchangers we discussed. Okay, which are available. These are all typical cooling towers. Okay, so different types of heat exchangers that are integrated in these plants. Okay, they become building blocks of these plants. Okay, and that becomes that is the heart of the story that you can really think about. That apart from, say, suppose reaction engineering, you are modeling the reactors. Mass transfer, you are modeling the separators. Okay. Thermodynamics, you are trying to gauge what is the system. Process calculation, mass balance, energy balance, and all these things. Okay. Process control, how to automate this particular system. So all the engineering, chemical engineering subjects that you are studying, these are the basic building blocks. Say, suppose, since all of you are engineers, so you are supposed to lead. You are supposed to lead a plant like this. Not only lead a plant like this, but also later on, how do you modify these plants into the level of the latest technologies? Okay, in which perhaps we are very poor, we are not very good. In general, we take technologies from outside countries and then try to run them. But then, as I see, the new generation is coming up, more and more knowledge-based, based economy has been generated. So we can see, a lot of innovation can take place in modifying these types of plants. Once we make ourselves ready with the fundamentals, we can really work on the modification of these plants in terms of the modernization of engineering. Okay, so that is the whole purpose why we are studying this course. Essentially, how do we really correlate this to the fundamentals of science, and then we develop the models, okay, which are able to really design and explain what is happening inside, and then optimize the efficiency of the process. So we discussed about, if both the fluids, hot and cold, are flowing in the same direction, it can be co-current. If they are moving in the other direction, opposite direction, that is counter current. If one is flowing perpendicular to the other, that is called a cross flow. And then you have cross counter flow, which is an arrangement like this. So this is a typical shell and tube heat exchanger. This is a plate heat exchanger, and you can see these arrowheads are telling you how exactly the fluids are moving inside the system. So briefly, this was the introductory part to give you the motivation that chemical plants, most of the chemical plants are associated with different types of heat exchangers like evaporators, like condensers, like boilers, like heat exchangers. Okay, heat exchangers are also of different type like plate and fin, shell and tube, compact heat exchangers. So now, if you look at the literature, if you look at internet, you will see there'll be n number of different types of heat exchangers, which is having a kind of like specific. Each of them is having a kind of very specific application towards a particular process. Okay, now question is that how exactly we as a incoming engineer, as a kind of sophomore, we can really model these things. We can really say, suppose if I give you a challenge that okay, by the end of second year, you come up with a heat exchanger. I mean, not only in terms of design, but also like a physical prototype. How exactly you do that. So for that, we need to know certain basic things, some fundamental things. Okay, everything starts with certain fundamental laws, rules. Okay, so the first thing that you need to know, how exactly this heat moves from one place to the other place, or any of these engineering processes, you need to know. That's why I have composed this particular slide for all of you, that this is the typical flow of heat in different processes, different engineering processes. Okay, so how exactly this heat flows in different types of processes, and the science associated with this called the thermodynamics. Thermo means heat and dynamics means motion. Okay, the flow of heat, how exactly it is flowing. So suppose you have a cup of tea, okay, or a cup of coffee. Now, slowly if you leave this like this, then what will happen? This cup of coffee will cool down. So you understand that heat is going out of this. Now, what is the mechanism? What exactly is the method? And how do I calculate how quickly this will cool down, how quickly this will heat up? So the understanding, so now you have CL203 where you are studying this thermodynamics. I'm going to quickly take those matters which are important for our course, is like I have just perhaps deleted. Let me just check once. Yes, let me just share another slide with you. Perhaps I have deleted that slide mistakenly. I will add it in your slides. Okay. Yes. So this is the slide in thermodynamics which you need to know. Thermodynamics is a science where you just study about 5 postulates and 4 laws. Okay, this will be one of the questions that you will be asked in your many of the interviews that you will face, job interviews. The moment you say that your favorite subject is thermodynamics, the first question that you may get is like how many postulates and how many laws are there. So typically thermodynamics have 5 postulates and 4 laws, but they are not exclusive. It doesn't mean to 9. It doesn't add up to 9. Okay, some of the postulates also coincide with the laws. Okay, so what is the first postulate? What is the postulate 1? There exists a form of energy known as internal energy, which for the systems at internal equilibrium is an intrinsic property of the system and functionally related to its characteristics coordinates. Okay, we are going to come. What is the detail of internal energy? First, you say you come to know about a parameter called internal energy in a postulate 1. Okay, we are going to clarify all the details of this one by one. Second comes the 0th law of thermodynamics. So what are the 4 laws? It is 0, 1, 2, 3. These are the 4 laws. There is no 4th law of thermodynamics. Okay, so it's like C language. It starts from 0. So 0th law, first law, second law, and third law. So these are the 4 laws of thermodynamics. Whereas 5 postulates, the postulate 1 is what? It is the definition of internal energy. What is postulate 2? It is the first law of thermodynamics. What does it say? The total energy of a closed system is equal to change in the heat and change in the work. This is where you see first time this parameter is coming called heat, which is defined as dq. Okay, du is equal to dq plus dw. W is work, q is heat, and u is the internal energy. How do you define internal energy of a system, of a closed system? How do you define it? You define it as a change in the heat content of the system and change in the work done by the system. Okay. Now, what is postulate 3? Postulate 3 defines a parameter called, like postulate 1 defines a parameter called internal energy. Postulate 3 defines a parameter called entropy. Okay, which directly correlates to this, the change of heat content of the system, and you normalize with respect to temperature. Okay, so what is entropy? Entropy is a parameter that actually tells you the degree of randomness. Somebody was asking in the last class that, sir, how do you decide that whether the quality is higher or lower? So I said that it is the wavelength of the energy that tells about the quality of energy. But from where this particular information comes? It is actually decided by the entropy. If I can measure the entropy of a process, I'll be really able to say that, whether this energy is of high quality or low quality. How? If the entropy is very large, that actually associates with a very low quality of energy. Okay, and if the entropy is very low, that means that particular system is associated with a very high quality of energy. Why? Because large entropy means more heat and more chaos, whereas small entropy means it is more order. Entropy is a measure of randomness. More entropy means more random. Okay. Less entropy means it's more ordered. So ordered states have the potential or the higher potential energy, higher quality of energy in order to really get converted to some amount of work. Whereas the lower, larger entropy systems will have will be more random, and they will have the lower quality of energy. So postulate 3 first time defines that how exactly. Why do I need to calculate this ds? Because if the process of the ds is low, that means I'm going to generate a lot of heat. That means entire process is going to generate a lot of heat, and that will lead to a very fast, and like say suppose when you are taking a matchstick and then you are brushing it very fast with a matchbox. So it immediately generates a lot of energy, but then this is an irreversible process. So you have this matchstick, at the top of the matchstick you have the burning material. Okay, now this is a very ordered form of energy. Whereas moment you burn it, what happens? It extinguishes the entire energy within a flash, and then what happens? Then it generates. It makes a very random system of materials. Okay. Now that is the degree of randomness. So it's a very high entropy generating process. That means high heat generating process, which leads to the inflammation. It generates locally a lot of energy, but it's a completely irreversible process. And that's a kind of situation where, it has its own purpose, but then these processes are very inefficient processes, and energy recovery is very less. Okay, which actually takes you to the second law. The postulate 3 talks about, there is a property called entropy, which actually decides the degree of randomness of a process, which gives you the second law of thermodynamics, and it tells that every process is irreversible as a direction to any engineering process. Okay, so if you go towards the natural direction, you will never be able to come back. Like say suppose if you are putting water from top to bottom, it is going to go from top to bottom only. But then if you really want to come back from bottom to top, what will happen? You have to do certain amount of work, and that is what is called. That is what is the statement of the second law of thermodynamics. So second law of thermodynamics is postulate 4, whereas Postulate 2 is the first law of thermodynamics. So postulate 1 is the definition of internal energy. Then you have 0th law of thermodynamics. Then you have first law of thermodynamics, which is called the energy balance equation. Then you define the entropy, which gives you the direction. That is the postulate for second law of thermodynamics. And postulate 5 is that any thermodynamic parameter, you need to express them in terms of the engineering variables, which is pressure, volume, temperature, chemical potential, so on and so forth, mole fraction. Okay. So in order to calculate these thermodynamic properties, whatever you are defining as internal energy, whatever you are defining as entropy, okay, whatever you are defining as energy balance and all, you need certain variables, okay, in order to express them. And these number of variables are fixed. For a given system, the number of variables are fixed and there is a method to calculate it. So essentially, if you look at this slide, this is giving you the basic of how to lay down all the engineering variables when you start modeling. And you will see, like, in every stage, we will try to satisfy this entire set of postulates and laws, before we really start. So suppose if you are doing mass balance and energy balance, that means you are restricting yourself in the domain of the first law of thermodynamics. Okay, suppose you are trying to design a kind of heat exchanger. So you will see that alongside first law of thermodynamics, you'll also take into account the second law of thermodynamics. Okay, and how do you evaluate this? How do you enforce these laws? What you will do? You will make use of the postulate 5. Say, suppose you are writing ds equal to dq by t. Now, how do you say dq? You know that mcp dt is your mcp dt. That's the way you calculate. M is the mass, cp is the C or cp is the specific heat per unit pressure, at constant pressure, and then dt. So you can see that you are making use of T in order to calculate the entropy. So essentially, these are the 3 parameters, and there are other parameters also, using which you are going to calculate these thermodynamic variables. Okay, and third law of thermodynamics, it defines the basis of entropy. So people will ask, like, random means how random, ordered means how ordered. Okay, that was the issue, in order to if you really want to calculate entropy. So third law of thermodynamics gives you the basis for the starting point. Okay, so this particular slide will be very, very important for many of the interviews that you will face. So please archive it. I have already placed it in the main lecture, but today while I'm modifying, I just somehow I remove from the lecture that I put for heat transfer. Okay, so thermodynamics is all about what? All about 4 laws. That is 0th law, that is first law, that is second law, and third law, and 5 postulates. Okay. So what is the summary of the whole event? The summary of the whole event is like this. So you have to understand 2 parameters called heat and work. Okay. Then you have to understand a few parameters like internal energy, enthalpy, entropy, and free energy. Okay. And then, how do you understand this? You understand this with a set of variables which are called the degrees of freedom. That means pressure, volume, temperature. So we'll get a kind of first introduction to how exactly it is to be done. So what is the statement of 0th law? What is 0th law? 0th law tells us that, say, suppose you have a system where A and B are in equilibrium. Okay, you have a system where A and B are in equilibrium, thermal equilibrium. Thermal equilibrium means, say, suppose I have dipped my finger into a hot water. So my finger can be system A and the hot water can be system B. And say, suppose you have put your finger, which is, say, suppose C, into the same water that is B. Okay, so suppose there is a pot which is having a hot water where I have put my finger and you have also put your finger. So this is the pot, B is the pot where hot water is there. A is my finger into this hot water. C is your finger into this hot water. And now if my finger is in equilibrium with the hot water and if your finger is in equilibrium with the hot water, so your finger and my finger will also be in equilibrium This is the statement of the 0th law of thermodynamics. So if you have a system where A and B are in equilibrium, and you have another set where B and C are in equilibrium, then A and C has to be in equilibrium. Okay, so first law of thermodynamics defines what is internal energy. What is internal energy? The change in the internal energy is the change in the heat content of the system and change in the work of the system. We are going to see what is this heat and work, how do they manifest. Okay, that we are going to see in a couple of slides later. So energy, total energy of a system, and please remember that this is a closed system. This is not an open system. Okay, this definition is true for a closed system, like say suppose a batch reactor, like say suppose a closed vessel. Okay, now the same definition is true for an open system. Okay, just like say suppose some water is flowing through pipe, you know, in addition to dq and dw, you add another parameter which is called pv. So and this internal energy adds another parameter called pv, which is the pressure volume work. You know, that gives the definition of the energy of an open system, which is called enthalpy. Enthalpy is a very similar parameter to the internal energy. The only difference is that this is true for an open system and this is true for a closed system. So internal energy and enthalpy these are all parameters. So suppose if you are using an enthalpy for a system, that means it is an open system. And if you really close down the system, you just calculate enthalpy. That means you are basically calculating the internal energy. Okay. Now second law gives you what? Second law gives you ds. The change of entropy is equal to dq reversible by T, where Q is what? Q is the heat content. The same dq. Okay. That divided by T, this is the definition of entropy. And then we define two parameters, which are called the free energies. Again, A is called the Helmholtz free energy and G is called the Gibbs free energy. So what is A? A is this U minus Ts. T is temperature, S is entropy, and G is this H minus Ts. So A will be applicable for the closed system, just like a batch reactor, just like an autoclave, just like a pressure cooker that is there in your house where you make dal, chawal, everything. Okay, and G is H minus Ts. This is for an engineering system, which is an open system. G is the Gibbs free energy, H is the enthalpy, and Ts is the I'm going to explain what is Ts. Okay, so this G equal to H minus Ts and A equal to U minus Ts are called the free energies of the system. Now, why do you need so many parameters? First place. So internal energy and enthalpy gives you the idea of total available energy for you. Okay. Say I give you 300 rupees, right? Now say suppose if I give you 300 rupees and if I say that you can only spend 50 rupees out of 300 rupees. Every day you can spend maximum 30 rupees or maybe maximum 50 rupees. So say tomorrow morning, you can only spend 50 rupees from 300 rupees and rest 250 rupees will not, you know, as per the condition, you will not be able to spend it. Okay. So next day, you will be able to spend 50 rupees, but then again, the rest of the money will be remaining with you. This is what is called something which is available to you, something which is not available to you. Okay. So the part of the energy that is available for any engineering application is called the free energy. So G and E is a measure of the available energy for you for an engineering application. How do you get G and A? Now what you do, this is the total energy available for an open system. This is the total energy available for a closed system. Okay, and TS, see, ds is defined by dq by T, right? Now if you multiply this with T, so the amount of heat that is available in the form of non-available work. Okay, so some part of the energy, say suppose today you can see that there is a fan that is hanging from the ceiling, and that fan, you know, it never rotates until or unless you turn on the switch. Now you can argue, you can do a thought experiment that there are so many molecules. According to the kinetic theory of the gases, that every oxygen, nitrogen, and all these molecules that are there, they are having random motion in the air. But then that doesn't really rotate the fan. What is the reason? Because this particular work is expressed as the work that is the kinetic theory, the gas molecules, they are moving. that particular work, is expressed into this random work, or like, this non-available work, which is expressed by T into S. Okay, this particular work is not available for you for any engineering purpose. Always, only a part of the energy will be available for you for any engineering purpose. Okay, so what you do, you first define this S at 0 Kelvin. This is the way you define this is the way the third law of thermodynamics defines the entropy. Okay, how does it define the entropy? You can see that this is defining just in terms of heat. This is the heat of formation, this heat of vaporization at different level. And you can see Cp dt is what? Cp is the specific heat per unit time. So Cp dt is dq, and dq is divided by T. Okay, so now this is the dq associated with, you are taking from 0 to freezing point, that is 0 Kelvin to freezing point. This is the latent heat of freezing. Okay, then freezing to vaporization, then latent heat of vaporization, from vaporization to the temperature that you want to go. So entropy, third law of thermodynamics defines, I should add here third also. So third law of thermodynamics defines what? It defines what is the total degree of randomness associated with the system, and what is the amount of energy that is not available with you, which is quantified by this parameter called entropy. Now, what is the total amount of energy available to me? That is du or dH. That is U or H. Du is the change in the internal energy, and U is the total internal energy. dH is the change in the enthalpy, H is the total enthalpy. So this is the total amount of energy available to me. And if I subtract the unavailable part from the available part, if I subtract the available part from the unavailable part, total to unavailable, I get the energy that is available to me. I get the energy that is available to me. This is true for a closed system, and this is true for an open system. So that's why these energies are called the free energy of a process. This, if I evaluate G, if I evaluate G, I'll get what is the amount of energy available for an open system. If I evaluate A, I'll understand what is the amount of energy available for a closed system. And this is the way the calculations are done in thermodynamics. I just progress beyond this. So now I need to calculate the internal energy, I need to calculate the enthalpy, I need to calculate the different other parameters that I have defined. So how do you do it? You use the degrees of freedom. What are those degrees of freedom? These are basically variables like pressure, like temperature, like volume. Pressure and volume will give you work. Temperature will give you entropy. Okay, mass will be giving you the either intensive property or extensive property. And then mass in terms of what? If you have multi-component system, multi-phase system, there'll be different contours associated with that. Now, before we really indulge into the real calculations, we have to first understand, from the third law of thermodynamics. From here, you can really figure out that there are two types of heat. If I classify, one is called the latent heat. Latent heat generally appears during the time of phase change. Say suppose solid to liquid, say suppose liquid to gas. This liquid to vapor. These are the situations where you need the latent heat. So what is the signature of a latent heat? Latent heat means the temperature remain constant. Okay, what will be the change in the entropy in this sort of situation? It will be huge, because say suppose there is a solid, there is a lot of ordering in terms of molecule lattice structures. Now you give energy, and then what happens after some point of time? They become liquid. That means they become very random. So there is a huge amount of energy entropy generated from this place to this place to make it more ordered to more random. Okay, which is expressed as the latent heat. Whereas sensible heat is what? Sensible heat is slowly increasing the degree of randomness or vibration inside the molecule. So in the sensible heat, you always see that there is a gradual increase in the temperature. Okay, whereas gradual increase in the randomness. Whereas in case of a latent heat, the temperature remains constant, but it is the molecular ordering that changes heavily. Okay, so that's the reason why you see when you talk about entropy calculation, here you see you are calculating only the heat content of the system. It's a gradual process, sensible heat. Whereas when you are going for the change of phase change calculations, you see that what you are doing, you are calculating that. So this is associated with huge amount of entropy generation associated with the process. Okay, this is actually converting in a very ordered system to a disordered system. Right now, in this sort of cases, in this sort of situations, the most important parameter to decide that how many parameters you will require in order to define the problem very, very clearly. And that comes from the Gibbs phase rule, which says that F is the number of parameters that you require, C is the number of components, say suppose sodium chloride and water, salt water. These are the two components in a salt water situation. Phase, two phases, last class we have discussed, oil and water phase. Okay, so these are the two phases with definite phase boundaries, plus 2. So the Gibbs phase rule tells that for a given system, you require this many number of variables, okay, in order to define the system, in order to model the system. Example, say suppose I have pure water. So how many components? Number of components is 1. How many phases? Number of phases is 1. So 1 cancels out. So I need 2. So if I really need to calculate the internal energy of water, pure water, I just need to know 2 of the many parameters that are there. Any two of the many parameters that are there. Any two of the all the thermodynamic measurable parameters. Say this can be PV also. This can be NV also. If I know 2 of them, I will know each and every other parameter that is associated with the internal energy. I will definitely know you if I really know 2 variables. Like if I know the temperature and volume of the system, I will be able to evaluate the internal energy of pure water. If you give me temperature and volume, I will be able to really calculate the internal energy of a system. Okay, so we started with the laws. So first law tells us what? The energy balance. Okay, second law is what? In which direction it is flowing. And third law is defined is what is the degree of randomness. Okay, then what we define different types of energies, like internal energy for a closed system, enthalpy for an open system, and these are the total energies available to us. And from second law we understood how much, second and third law we understood how much is the randomness associated with the system, so how much energy is not available to me, and that I divide, that I subtract from the total energy to get what is the amount of energy available to me. Now I need to calculate, how do I calculate this available energy? I calculate these available energies with the help of the thermodynamic variables. And for a given system, I know how many variables do I require in order to calculate them. Okay, so this is the basic framework of any engineering calculation related to heat transfer. What is the flow? How exactly they flow? So you can really combine energy into two forms. One is a microscopic form and one is the macroscopic form. What is the microscopic form? What is happening internally inside the gases? What is the microscopic form? A car is moving. Okay, a ball is like, falling in air, right? Now, when the macroscopic form takes place, there is a transfer of energy in the form of work or in the form of heat. So suppose if I am walking, that means I am doing some work, but then my shoes are undergoing some friction with the surface, and that is generating heat. Okay, so whenever there is a work done, there is a heat generation associated with that, and that happens because of the transfer of energy. Say suppose potential to kinetic energy. That is a macroscopic form of energy, whereas at the microscopic level, something else happens. Okay, so total energy of a system is defined as all the energies that are available inside the system. Great. Now, say suppose if you are considering a system which is an engineering system, you define 3 parameters. The system or the process that is under the focus, that is called the system. Say suppose heat exchanger, it is a system. Suppose evaporator, it is a system. Suppose a reactor, it is a system. Okay, suppose a pump, it is a system. Suppose a kind of like flow meter, Venturi meter, it's a system. Now, apart from the system, whatever is there, that is called surrounding. When you do an engineering calculation, you do the calculation around the system, and whatever is excluding the system that you call as surrounding. And the place which is in between the system and surrounding is called the boundary. Okay. Now, if you have a closed system, that means, if this is a closed system, that means you don't allow any mass exchange, but you only allow the energy exchange, which was the case for the first law of thermodynamics. So you just heat up the system, or you just cool down the system without loss of any mass. That is what is called a closed system. Whereas if you allow both mass and heat to flow, that is called an open system, which is the case for most of our continuous processes. And closed system is associated with most of the engineering batch systems are called the closed systems. And an isolated system is that when you don't allow any energy or any mass exchange, that is what is called an isolated system. Right? What are the microscopic forms of energy? The microscopic forms of energy, you can see that molecular vibration, molecular rotation, nuclear energy, these are all the microscopic forms of energy. Okay, which are very much closely, this microscopic form of energy is very much closely related to the internal energy. Say suppose there is a turbine, right? Now this turbine is will remain stationary. Say suppose if you do not have any water flow through it. In a stationary water, you will see it will remain stagnant. However, there are this molecular vibration, nuclear energies, everything are there. Now, why doesn't it rotate the turbine? Reason behind that is, now say suppose a group of molecules which are trying to rotate it in the clockwise direction, a group of other molecules are also trying to rotate it in the other direction. Now this statistical average, it doesn't allow it to move until or unless you create an hydrostatic head, okay, where you give a directional flow of the fluid, and then it hits one of the impellers, and then it starts rotating. Then you will see that this will start rotating. Correct? So as such, the internal energy of the process have one part, which is the energy that is not available to you. On the other side, if you really generate an hydrostatic head, that generates a potential energy, and that potential energy is a macroscopic form of energy, which compels the impeller to rotate. So for a closed system, it is an internal energy. For an open system, the total energy is an enthalpy, and the energy that you work for engineering calculations is the free energy of the process. Example, say related to heat transfer, you have a certain set of examples. Say I have given two examples at the top. These are all, say, two open systems, but these are the batch processes. What is the first open system? Say suppose this is a very common system all of you have seen. That say there is a burner, and then there is a saucepan, and then you have put a kind of like water into it. And in the vessel, the water, when you are heating up, what is happening? These waters are getting heated up. First they are getting heated up. Okay, then there are bubbles, and then this water it started boiling. Okay, so this is one system where we can see, if you really have some fire source at the bottom, okay, or say a heat source at the bottom, then what happens? Then you have the water that is getting boiled. Okay, now essentially this is a batch system. This is an open system. This is translated into an industrial boiler, which you see at the bottom. So there is a grating, and then you have some fuels. You are burning them up. You are generating. Then there is a fire here. Okay, and then what is happening? You are having water at the bottom, and then this water is getting converted to what? This is the way the chula takes place in your house. No, so once you are burning through chimney, you are throwing out all the hot air, but then this is a heat exchanger where you have this water, and this water is getting into this is the industrial boiler. This is a boiler in a thermal power plant with all the pressure gauge, pump, and all these things. This is a formal boiler. So this is a continuous boiling process that is taking place in an industry. Whereas this is a local homemade batch process, which is just use a vessel in terms of heating up of water. In winter time, what you do? You take some woods and then you burn them, and you have your hands. You just make sure that you are away from the winter crunches. Okay. Now this is nothing but a batch process open system. Whereas if you get into a continuous mode, you have a reactor. Okay, inside the reactor, what you are doing? You are burning it. This is like a kind of catalytic converter, Okay, I have given another example to you that this is the reactor part. Okay, these are the control rods. So what is happening? You are putting the fluid, they are getting reacted here. Okay, this is the heat exchanger, and then you are taking to the turbine, okay, where the steam is generated. So you can see that, this burner here is a batch process to heat up your hands, which is like, having some issues associated with the coldness of the atmosphere. Whereas this process, it is generating electricity for you. The same system. This is a continuous system. This is a batch system. Now, this gives us the clue for the heat transfer. There are three modes of heat transfer, which will be the final discussion today before I take up some of your questions. So there are three modes of heat transfer that is taking place in this situation. One is called the conduction, one is called the convection, and the third is called the radiation. Radiation is happening between the burner and this fluid. Conduction is happening in all the solid components, whereas wherever there is a flow of fluid, there is some convection taking place. Here also, like say suppose when I am burning it, I have started burning, it's a high temperature, this is a relatively lower temperature. So the process of heat transfer is radiation. So say if I put any steel rod into this thing, then there is a conduction, and if there is a flow of air, that is what is called the radiative heat transfer. Convection heat transfer. If there is a fluid flow, that is what is called the. So there are three modes of heat transfer that takes place in any open or closed system or in any batch or continuous process, which is called conduction, convection, and radiation. Okay, so these are all different mechanisms of heat transfer. These mechanisms of heat transfer, like say suppose if you are cooling down potato, okay, if you are heating up water, hot coffee, putting up insulation, okay. So these are all associated with three different processes, which are called convection, conduction, and radiation, and pioneered by two very well-known scientists. One is Joule, the other is Fourier, and the other part, rather three very renowned scientists, Joule, Fourier, and Newton. I have given Newton, all of you know, very popular and very well accomplished scientist. But then, Joule and Fourier are two persons, who have contributed in the developments, and those developments we are going to discuss from slide 23, or rather it will become 24 in the next class. So I take up some questions here, if you have any questions. Questions? No questions? So should I continue for another 5 minutes then? I just stopped thinking that all of you have a lot of questions. Aman, you have any question? Aman Kumar Prajapati. Ankit. Ankit, any question?
No, sir.
It's understandable. How is your network there? Is it okay?
Average, not okay.
Not okay? You could not follow the lecture?
I follow, but in between the lecture, there is some beginning.
Okay, so please download the lecture later on. Okay, this will be available online and study it. Okay. You do you have any question?
No, sir.
Okay. Krishna Kumar, do you have any question? Nupur Sharma, you have any question? Varun Pandey.
Yes, sir.
Any questions?
No, sir.
Anshu Kumar, yeah.
Sir, Gibbs energy and Helmholtz energy are available energy or unavailable energy?
These are all available energy. An unavailable part is TS. TS part is the unavailable one.
Yes.
And H is H and U are the total one. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So total minus unavailable is available energy. Is that clear? Yeah. Abhi Yadav, you have any question? Somebody else also?
No,
raised
sir.
hand? Okay. So Anshu has raised hand. So any other question, Anshu?
Sir, the formula you have told that F barabar C minus P plus 2. What is C in this?
C is the number of components. P is the number of phases. Okay. So components means last class we have discussed that components means say suppose you have mixed ethanol into water. Okay, alcohol water mixture. So they are solvable, correct? So you have only single phase, that is liquid phase. But then you have two components, one is ethanol and the other is water. Okay. So that is a kind of two component system. So C actually tells you, say suppose you add methanol, ethanol and water. All three are soluble in each other, correct? So this becomes a single phase three component system. So single phase means one is P. C is how much? 3. So 3 plus 2, 5 minus 1, 4. So you will require 4 variables in order to analyze the system. What will be those 4 variables? You can choose like temperature, volume. These can be 2 variables, and then you can choose N1 and N2. That means the mole fraction of say ethanol and mole fraction of say suppose methanol, any 2 of 3. So if you choose 4 variables, say suppose internal energy is a function of temperature, volume, mole fraction of ethanol and mole fraction of water, or mole fraction of ethanol and mole fraction of water. If you choose 4, then you will be able to calculate all the variables, U, H, G, S, all thermodynamic variables, Q, W, you will be able to calculate all the thermodynamic variables. Now P is the number of phases. Say suppose I have only liquid vapor. I have given you an example. Say suppose water is evaporating in an evaporator. So you have a single component system here. It's only water, but you have got 2 phases, right? So in that situation, if you have 2 phases and 1 component, then you just require only. So suppose U is a function of temperature. That's why you will see like, in the latent heat of vaporization and all here, what is happening? The temperature is becoming constant. Okay, only the degree of randomness is increasing. So you just require only 1 variable in order to really follow the phase change of a process, which is a single component system. If it becomes 2 component, you will require 2 variables. If it becomes 3 component system, you will require how much? You will require 3 component means 3 minus 2, that means 2 phases, plus 2, that means you require 3 variables for that. Clear? Is that clear? Is that clear to all of you? Anshu, right? It was Anshu. Was it clear to you? Hello? So look at the slide number 15, okay, of the presentation, where you have types of heat and phase rule given. So from there, you will be able to really figure out. Okay. Okay. Since you people do not have any other questions, so I stop here and we again meet tomorrow at 12 noon. Thank you. Thank you so much.